Good morning, everyone. Myself, Reddivar Venugopal, Assistant Professor of Physics, and I am working at Government Degree College, Mahabubad. Today, we are going to discuss about the topic of Introduction to Laser. That is, in the Unit 4 lasers of Solid State Physics, which is the syllabus for BSc Physics third year students of semester 5th. So, what is a laser? So, laser is a device which are mostly used in all the types of industries like drilling industries and cutting edge tools industries, so many industries. So, laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So, laser is a very intense, concentrated, highly parallel and monochromatic beam of light. So, coherence is a very important property of laser. What do you mean by coherence? So, let us take two sources. So, let us take two sources. One is one source is having some frequency. It is having some amplitude. It is propagating in one particular direction. The other source is having some amplitude, and it is having some particular frequency, and it is propagating in a particular direction, whatever it is. But these two sources to be coherent, they should be propagating in same direction, that is okay, and they should have same frequency, and the amplitude also should be almost same. So these are the properties of a coherent source. So to produce the laser beam, coherence is the main important property to be there. So what is maybe incoherence? The light emitted from sun or other ordinary sources such as tungsten filament or fluorescent tube lights is spread over a wide range of frequencies. So, for example, sunlight is spread over infrared, visible and ultraviolet spectrum. So, the amount of energy available in each frequency range is very less. So, such light is irregular and consists of mixed frequencies, and it will be propagating in very diverging directions. So that's why it is incoherent. So incoherent light is a spontaneous and random emission of photons by atoms in the excited state. So these photons will not be in phase with each other, because one atom is, let us say, one atom is in ground state. It is excited to the excited state. When it is coming back to the ground state, it emits some light. That light is okay, but it will be propagating in one particular direction. Suppose we have another atom that is also got accelerated to, it has gone to excited state. When it is coming to ground state, it is also emitting light of particular frequency. These frequencies, first atom emission frequency and second atom emission frequency may not be same, and their light, that means the emitted light will be also going in different directions. That's why they won't be coherent sources. That's why they cannot produce intense beam. So coherent light is uniform frequency, amplitude and continuity and constant initial phase difference. That means coherent light should have uniform frequency, amplitude, continuity and constant initial phase difference. So throughout the propagation of two coherent sources, they should have a constant phase difference, otherwise they cannot produce a laser beam. So these are the various interactions related to the laser. The first one is absorption. Suppose one atom is in ground state. We have shined some light on this atom which is in ground state. It absorbs that energy. It may go to the excited state. It stays there for some time, but that is very less, of the order of 10 to the power -8 seconds. So when it is in the excited state, it cannot be there for infinite time. It comes to ground state in two processes. One is spontaneous emission. The other one is stimulated emission. So spontaneous emission is spontaneous processes. But let me discuss about the induced absorption. Photons of suitable size are supplied to atoms in the ground state. These atoms absorb the supplied energy and go to the excited higher energy state. If EI and EJ are the energies of ground state and excited state respectively, like this is the ground state. In ground state, one atom is there. If we shine light on this one of the energy H2, that is called EJ minus EI, it goes to the excited state, that is E1. But it cannot stay there for long time because the lifetime of the atom in this excited state is of the order of 10 to the power minus 8 seconds. So obviously it come back to the ground state. That is the next slide. So an excited atom can stay in a higher energy state only for the time of 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds. After this time, it returns back to the lower energy state by emitting a photon of energy. H2 is equal to E1 minus E0, as we discussed in the earlier slide. This process is called as spontaneous emission. So during spontaneous emission, photons are emitted randomly and hence they will not in phase with each other, as we had discussed earlier. Therefore, the beam the beam of light emitted is incoherent. So here, just observe this diagram. This is the process. That means an atom in ground state has absorbed some energy of the amount of E1 minus E0. It has gone to excited state. So it, without any external interactions, it is coming to the ground state after emitting a photon of energy H2, that is equal to E1 minus E0. So stimulated emission, that means already I told you that the emission is of two types. One is spontaneous emission without any external interactions. That means without any external agents, the process of emission is taking place. That emission process is called as spontaneous emission. This is stimulated emission. In this one, external agents will be participating in the interaction. That means external agency means a photon of equal amount of energy, which is equal to the energy difference between E1 minus E0. So when a photon of suitable size is showered or made to fall on an excited atom in the higher energy state, the atom falls back to the ground state by emitting a photon of energy H2, that is called E1 minus E0, which is in phase with stimulating incident photon. Here, just observe this one. Already the atom is in excited state. What we are doing, we are shining a photon, calling stimulated photon of energy, which is exactly equal to E1 minus E0 energy. That's why what is happening, when it shines on this atom, which is already in excited state, instead of one single photon, two photons of same frequency, whatever it is, whatever the energy of the incident photon, two photons of same energy will be emitted. This process is called as stimulated emission. This process is called as stimulated emission. These two photons are of same frequency and they are having same amplitude, and they will be propagating in the same direction. That means they are coherent. These two photons are coherent. That means these two light sources are coherent sources. This is the thing we have to require to achieve laser action. So this is the absorption. This is just like diagram. Just observe here. This is the ground state. This is the excited state. Ground state is E1. Excited state is E2. We are showering a photon of energy E2 minus E1 on this particular atom. So after absorbing this one, it goes to the excited state. So E2 is the E2 energy is equal to E1 plus H nu, because we are this difference, energy difference E2 minus E1 is equal to H nu. That's why E2 is equal to E1 plus H nu. It becomes, so E2 minus E1 is equal to, we are calling it as delta E, that will be equal to H nu. So this probability, that means the transition probability of an atom from this ground state to exit state, that is called the probability occurrence of this absorption from state 1 to state 2 is proportional to the energy density of the incident radiation, that is U of V. So we are calling the probability of transition from E1 to E2 as P12, and this will be proportional to the incident energy density, that is EV. So if you remove the proportionality symbol, we keep one constant B12, that is called as Einstein coefficient of radiation for absorption. Next, coming to spontaneous emission, we have showered a photon on this atom which is in ground state. It has absorbed that particular energy. It has gone to the excited state. Now the atom is in excited state. So what happens? It cannot stay there for very long time. It can stay up to 10 to the power minus 8 seconds time only there. So what happens? It comes back to ground state after 10 to the power minus 8 seconds. This process is called as spontaneous emission. So this is the photon emitted. So this probability of occurrence from excited state to ground state, that is called as spontaneous emission from transition from state 2 to state 1, depends only on the properties of 2 and 1 states only, because it doesn't depend on the energy, because we are not showering any photon onto the atom which is there in excited state. That's why what happens, it only depends on the properties of the states 2 and 1, that is excited state and ground state. So therefore the probability of transition from state 2 to state 1, that is P2 to P21 dash, that is equal to A21, where proportionality constant, that is A21, is the Einstein coefficient for spontaneous emission. Next, let us come to stimulated emission. Here already the atom is in excited state. What we are doing, we are showering one photon of the same frequency H2 onto this atom. So in this process, what happens, instead of single photon, 2 photons will come out. This is called as stimulated emission. So the probability occurrence of the stimulated emission transition from upper energy level, that is 2, to lower energy level, that is 1, is proportional to the energy density UV of the radiation, and is expressed as P21 double dash, that is equal to B21 and UV, where B21 is the proportionality constant and it is called as Einstein coefficient of radiation for stimulated emission. So the total probability of emission and total probability of absorption, both from 2 to 1 to the lower level, is given by P21 is equal to P21 dash plus P2 double dash. This is because of spontaneous emission. This is because of stimulated emission. So this is the total probability, that means total probability of emission. So if you substitute these values from the previous slides, we will get P21 is equal to A21 plus B21 into EV. So here we are going to derive the relationship between Einstein coefficient. Till now what we have discussed about Einstein coefficients, where A21 is the stimulated coefficient, Einstein coefficient of radiation for absorption. Sorry, for Einstein coefficient of radiation for spontaneous emission. And we have discussed one more, that is B21. B21 is the Einstein coefficient of radiation for stimulated emission. And we have discussed one more coefficient also, that is A12, that is Einstein coefficient of radiation for absorption. So we have 3 Einstein coefficients, that is A12, and we have A21, and we have B12 and B21. So we have to derive a relation between this Einstein coefficient. That is the process we are doing now. So for this one, let n1 and n2 be the number of atoms in any at any instant in the state 1 and state 2 respectively. The probability of absorption for the number of atoms from state 1 to state 2 per unit time is given by n1 p12 is equal to n1 b12 into ev. Here p12 we know already, that is b12 into ev. Here n1 is there, we are simply substituting n1, that's all. The total probability of transition for number of atoms from state 2 to state 1 is given by n2 p21 is equal to n2 into, that is probability of transition from state 2 to state 1, that is A21 plus n2 into B21, it comes like this. So in thermal equilibrium at a temperature T, the absorption and emission probabilities are equal. So that's why n1 p12 is equal to n2 p21 becomes. So by substituting the values of p12 and p21 from the previous slides, we will come to an equation, that is u into u is equal to n2 a21 divided by n1 b12 minus n2 b21. Here a21 is the Einstein coefficient of radiation for spontaneous emission. B21 is the Einstein coefficient of radiation for stimulated emission. Here B12 is the Einstein coefficient of radiation for absorption. So we have to derive a relation between these three Einstein coefficients. That is the thing we are doing. So just we have to bring common, that is B21 and N2. If it bring common, what happens here? B12 is there already, so it becomes A21 divided by B21 into N1 by N2 minus 1 it becomes. But according to Einstein, this B12 is equal to B21. So that's why what happens here, A21, we can write this equation as U of U is equal to A21 divided by B21 into, we are just rearranging these terms, that's all. U of U is equal to A21 by B21 into 1 divided by N1 by N2 minus 1 it becomes. Now we know Boltzmann's law. So according to Boltzmann law, the distribution of atoms among the different energy levels, we have one equation that is equal to, that is n of a particular state. Let us say we have earth state, that is some different energy level. Let us say different energy levels are there. Different, 1 minute, let me explain. Let us say these are the different energy levels. This is the ground state. Let us say this is of energy E1 and the number of atoms in this level is N1. This is a level with energy E2 and the number of atoms in this energy level is N2. And we have one ground state also, that is of energy E0 and is having energy, number of atoms are N0. So like this, we have different energy levels. Let us say this is the earth state, where earth energy level. So in this one, the atoms are having energy ER, and the number of atoms in that particular energy level is, let us say, NR. But according to Boltzmann law, what happens? NR is equal to N0 into exponential minus ER divided by KT. This is called as KBT, where B is the Boltzmann constant. So this is the Boltzmann's law. So according to what I explained previously, n1 becomes n1, that is equal to n0 into exponential minus e1 by kt it becomes, and n2 becomes n that is equal to n0 into exponential minus e2 by kt becomes. So we take the ratio, that is n1 by n2, that is equal to exponential minus e1 by kt divided by exponential minus e2 by kt it becomes. So we can write this one like this. So this is equal to exponential minus e2 by e2 minus e1 by kt it becomes. So it becomes like this. So, but we know that this one e2 minus e1 is nothing but h2. We substitute that one here. So n1 by n2 is equal to exponential h2 by kt it becomes. So by substituting that value, this value in the previous equation, that is u of v, e of v that is equal to a2 by a1 divided by b2 by b1, sorry b21 into 1 divided by exponential h2 by kt minus 1 it becomes. So next one, we know that the Planck's radiation law yields energy density radiation like this, that is u of v is equal to 85h0 divided by c cube into 1 divided by exponential h0 by kt minus 1. If we compare the previous in previous slide, that is u of v is equal to a21 by b21 into 1 divided by exponential h0 by kt minus 1 is there. So these second terms are equal, but the only thing is that in the previous slide, instead of a85h2 divided by c cube, a21 by b21 is there. That's why we compare both the equations, and we will come to a conclusion that a21 by b21 is equal to 85h cube divided by c cube. Just rearrange these terms by substituting the value of this one. So what we get, b21 by a21 is equal to c cube, it reverses. So c cube divided by 8 by h and 1 by nu cube. This is a constant. This is a constant. So that is b21 by a21 is inversely proportional to the frequency of the resonant radiation. Therefore, higher is the frequency, is smaller the value of b21. So that is the comparatively difficult to obtain stimulated emission of higher radiation. So just let us discuss about brief background of physics relating to this lasing action. In 1917, Einstein predicted that under certain circumstances, a photon incident upon a material can generate a second photon of exactly same frequency, and that is also in phase with the incident photon, and it is of the same polarization of the incident photon, and it is having the same direction of propagation as of incident photon. In other words, both the beams, both the incident photon and the emitted photon, both are coherent beams. So this is the stimulated emission diagram. So this is the energy state E1, that is ground state. This is the energy state E2, that is electron in excited state or atom in excited state. So this is the incident photon called stimulated photon. It is inciding on this one. What happens, as we have discussed earlier, two photons of same wavelength and propagating in the same direction and having same amplitude, everything same. They come out. These two photons are called coherent photons, or they are stimulated photons from these atoms. They will be having the coherent properties. So this emitted photon, each of the emitted photon will be having the energy, that is h is equal to E2 minus E1. So again let us discuss about this one, how the lasing action occurs. So in a system, all three mechanisms occurs. So however the stimulated emission is very sluggish compared to the spontaneous emission. We need to have a much stimulated emission as possible for laser action, as we discussed in the uh, previous slides. So for population inversion and optical pumping, so population inversion is nothing but, in general, let us say this is our ground state, this is our excitation state. In general, what is the situation? In ground state, number of atoms are very high when compared to the excited state. But this should not achieve lasing action. So for lasing action, what should be there? The phenomena, the number of atoms in the excited state should be large when compared to the ground state. This phenomena is called as population inversion. So to achieve this population inversion, we have to do something. So the process in which we achieve this population inversion is called as optical pumping. So usually the number of atoms in the lower energy state is more than that in the excited state. According to Boltzmann, the ratio of atoms in the energy states J and I at temperature T is given by N2 is equal to N0 into exponential minus E2 by KT, and N1 is equal to N0 into exponential minus E1 by KT. N0 N1 cancels, so this will be the relation. So this is equal to exponential minus E2 minus E1 by KT it becomes. But for population inversion I already explained. It is a process. It is a process, or it is a phenomena required to achieve laser action. So, but for population inversion, N2 should be greater than N1. So that's why this, if you take this term, this is N2, that means N2 by N1 should be greater than or equal to 1. That means this should be greater than 1. So same as it is, this should be greater than 1. So this is exponential is there, but we know that exponential minus x is equal to 1 minus x plus x square by 2 minus x cube by 3 factorial plus x to the power of 4 by 4 factorial, so on things will be there. But the thing is that when x is less than 1, we can write exponential x as 1 minus x simply by neglecting higher order terms. So by using that relation, what we are writing here, this exponential minus e2 minus e1 by kbt, we are writing like 1 minus u2 minus e1 by kbt plus higher order terms greater than 1. Just we are neglecting this one, these terms. So 1 minus u2 minus e1 by kbt will be greater than 1, or simply just subtract 1 from this side and 1 from that side. It becomes minus e2 minus e1 by kbt should be greater than 0. It becomes, that means if we call this one as delta E, it becomes delta E minus delta E by kbt should be less than 0, because this is greater than 0 means this is less than 0. So here delta E is a positive quantity and kb is also positive quantity. The only option left is T is positive. It means we have to achieve the population inversion. So here just let us discuss about the population, how we achieve population inversion and what is the methodology we have to follow. All these things are here. The rate of stimulated absorption of photons is given by here Ra, that means absorption, rate of absorption. Ra is equal to N1 P12. As we have discussed already, P12 we know, that is B12 UV, sorry, and so Ra is equal to N1 P12, that is equal to N1 B12 UV it becomes, and the rate of stimulated emission of photons is given by RSTE, stimulated emission, that is equal to N2 P21, that is equal to N2 B21 of UV it becomes. But according to Einstein, we already know that B12 is equal to B21. So that is, if N2 is greater than N1, the rate of stimulated emission is more than the rate of stimulated absorption. This results in an increase of UV and hence amplification of light becomes possible. the state of matter radiation system in which N2 is greater than N1 is called as population inversion. To emit photons which are coherent, that is in same space, the number of atoms in the higher energy state must be greater than in the ground state, or that is lower energy state. So the process of making population of atoms in the higher energy state more than that in the lower energy state is called as population inversion. I have explained this already. So the method by which a population inversion is achieved is called as pumping or optical pumping mechanism. In this process, atoms are raised to an excited state by injecting into system of frequency different from the stimulated frequency. So population inversion can be achieved, can be understood with the help of three-level energy diagram that comes in the next slide. Just observe here. So let us take a three-level system, whatever it is. Let us say, for example, let us consider ruby crystal. In ruby crystal, we have three energy levels. The first energy level is called, this is first energy level, second and third energy level. This first energy level is called as ground state. This second energy level is called as metastable state, because in this particular state, the atoms which are excited can stay more time when that is almost 1000 times of normal stimulated spontaneous emission time. So that's why we are calling it as metastable state. And we have one more state, that is energy state. We are calling it as E2. This state is normal. So now let me explain how this population inversion is achieved. So this is the ground state of energy E0. This is the metastable state of energy E1, and this is the excited state of energy E2. So all the atoms which are there in the ground state. So what we are doing, we are shining these atoms with 3 photons having having energy H2. That means these 3 photons incident on these 3 atoms. That's why they will go to the excited state. What happens? The atoms cannot stay in this excited state more than 10 to the power minus 8 seconds. What they do, they come back to a metastable state, that is called E1 state. Here the atoms can stay longer than this excited state. They can stay up to 10 to the power minus 3 seconds. That means 1 millisecond. So that's why they come back here. From this state, this metastable state to ground state, transitions will happen. These transitions are stimulated emission transitions. That's why here instead of 3 photons, we get 6 photons. Like this, a beam of light will come out. All the photons in that particular beam will be having coherent properties. This beam will be going in the same direction. That's why we will get high intense laser beam. Here, just observe, in thermal equilibrium, this is a bar chart which represents the atoms in different energy levels. So, in thermal equilibrium, what is the situation? In thermal equilibrium, number of atoms, that is N0 in the energy level E0, and N1 is the number of atoms in the energy level E1, and N2 is the number of atoms which are there in the energy level E2. But in thermal equilibrium, what is the situation? N0 will be very high, and N1 is little bit less when compared to this one, and N2 is very less when compared to these two. This is the situation in thermal equilibrium. But when we achieve population inversion, the situation is different. So E0 is very less when compared to E1, because this is the metastable state, and this is the excited state E2. This will be almost more when compared to E0. So the process here, just observe, this is the actual situation. This is the actual situation. But we have achieved this situation, that is this called population inversion. This is the condition required to achieve lasing action. So there are different components in the laser system to achieve this population inversion. let me go one by one. The three components of laser division is the pump, the optical pump, to achieve to do optical pumping, or some pump. It may be an optical source or some light, some uh, energy source, something different like heating, whatever it is. So it's an energy source. The pump is an energy source or external source which supplies energy to the population inversion. The pump can be either optical or electrical or thermal. In Ruby laser, we use optical pumping, and in helium laser we use electrical discharge pumping. That means there we use electric field. So the laser medium, this is the medium in which we are going to achieve lasering action. The resonator. That resonator means we have one set of mirrors. Either it can be flat mirrors or spherical mirrors will be there. Among them, one of the mirror is having reflection coefficient very near to 1. The other mirror will be having reflection coefficient less than 1. That means not that much, is little bit less. So here the resonator consists of a pair of plane or spherical mirrors having common principal axis. The reflection coefficient of one of the mirror is very near to 1, and that of the other is kept less than 1. The resonator is basically a feedback device that directs the photon back and forth in the laser medium. Here in the next slide, it is diagrammatically shown. Let me explain there. Here, these are the laser components. What are the laser components? We should have one active medium that can be either solid or liquid or gas maybe. And we have one pumping mechanism or a pump, excitation mechanism or pump. What it does, it excites the active medium such that population inversion is achieved. And these are the highly reflecting mirrors. They can be either flat like this, or they can be either spherical mirrors also. Okay. So when the stimulated emission happens, initially the number of photons in this in between these reflecting mirrors is less, but after continuous emission of photons, what happens? This after certain time, laser beam comes out because the light intensity within this area is very very high. That's why the laser beam comes out and it comes like this. So the three components of laser devices are like pump. So the excitation source which supplies energy to obtain population inversion, this is called pump. The pump can be optical, electrical or thermal. In Ruby laser we use optical pumping, and in helium neon laser we use electrical discharge pumping. Okay, we have discussed already. The energy supplied by the pump exerts the atom to higher energy levels, and through the spontaneous emission of through non-reductive process, the population inversion occurs. The lifetime of the metastable energy state in which population inversion occurs must be very large as compared to the normal lifetime of the excited atom in the other energy state. So the laser medium, it is material in which the laser action is made to take place. It may be solid, liquid or gas, as we have discussed. The very important characteristic requirement for the medium is that inversion should be possible in it. This is the main condition. First, remember this one. That means one metastable state should be there. Many lasers are named after the material used in this achieving the laser action. For example, the output of the Ruby laser is at 694.3 nanometers, and that of helium neon laser is at 632.8 nanometers, and of carbon dioxide laser is at 10.6 micrometers. Just observe, Ruby laser is a solid state laser, helium neon laser is a gas laser, and this is carbon dioxide laser, also a gas laser. But here the lasing medium in helium neon laser is the lasing medium is the mixture of helium and neon. In ruby laser, the lasing medium is the rod of ruby. It is a ruby rod which is of pink color, and in CO2 laser, the lasing medium is CO2. Note, laser action has been observed in many more than half of the known atoms, and laser wavelength may be extended from ultraviolet region to infrared region. The most important characteristic requirement for laser medium is that we should be able to obtain population inversion in it. That's the condition. This is the main condition. Just note this part. The characteristic requirement for the laser medium is that we should be able to obtain population inversion in it. According to Boltzmann condition, if N1 and N2 are like this, N2 divided by N1, that is equal to exponential minus H2 by KT, where H2 is equal to E2 minus E1. Therefore, N2 in general less than N1. Because of this reason, vigorous pumping may be required for sustaining the population inversion, and so the only certain pairs of energy levels with appropriate lifetime can be inverted. Next, coming to the resonator, it consists of a pair of plane or spherical mirrors having common principal axis. The reflection coefficient of one of the mirrors is very near to 1, and that of the other is kept less than 1. The resonator is basically a feedback device that directs the photon back and forth through the laser medium, and in the process the number of photons is less than very high. So this is the principle of laser. So we will discuss this thing tomorrow because the time is up today. So let us discuss this principle of laser tomorrow. Thank you very much.